This is an interesting one. You see, we don't get many games centered around Russia during this time, and especially not single-player story-driven RPG games. So when I saw the alpha for the Emperor's Own, I had to try it out, and my, was it a lot of fun. I think this game has some incredible potential, and as you'll see, there is very much some inspiration from massive games that we've seen in the past. So without further ado, welcome to the Emperor's Own. The Emperor's Own is a story-driven adventure game with RPG elements. It's set in an alternate universe, but inspired by the Russian Empire at the dawn of the 19th century. It features multi-dimensional characters, difficult moral dilemmas, and a mature branching narrative. The story is a place where we've never gone before, especially in games. It's a very unique era. Looking at the Russian Empire at the dawn of the 19th century, you play as a young officer in an imperial secret intelligence. You have to investigate these stories that have been told by the people living in these villages, going around and finding different clues and piecing it together. You can also make different decisions that will affect how you come to conclusions later on. The peasant uprising is threatening to turn into a bloody, class-based civil war. How far will you go to do your sworn duty? Will you restore order by any means necessary, or will you instead throw kindling into the fire and watch it burn all around you? In the Emperor's Own, choice is always yours. And this is what I love about it, the amount of choice you get. Currently at this stage, you don't really see many of the after effects in the game when you make certain choices. However, this is because it's just a short taster section that you're able to play in the free alpha demo. It will be interesting to see how these choices that you've made at the beginning end up affecting you later down the road, depending on what paths you take, depending on what type of player or person you want to be. Are you forgiving or are you brutal? These are different dilemmas that you're going to come across in the Emperor's Own. Along your adventure, you'll meet a memorable cast of characters. Each has their own thoughts, motivations, and hidden agendas. The world is not black and white. There are no heroes or villains. You'll encounter daring officers, noble ladies, corrupt officials, firebrand rebels, sadistic psychopaths, and God knows whatever else. So after a quick overview of The Emperor's Own, let's talk a little bit about how this game to be. Well, it's developed by a studio called warhorsestudios. They decided that they wanted to make this single-player story narrative-driven game, so they made a Kickstarter. Unfortunately, the Kickstarter didn't get enough promotion, so after £23,000 of money being pledged, they cancelled said Kickstarter. However, this does not mean the game isn't coming out, because the reason they made the Kickstarter was a bit of extra funding to help boost it, but they have mentioned that it will be back once they promoted it more. They just didn't really promote the Kickstarter at all, which is why it didn't do so well. But do not be afraid, you can actually play The Emperor's Own on Steam right now for free. There is an alpha teaser version of the game. It is a very short segment of what we're going to be seeing later on, but it's about an hour and a half of stuff that you can get your hands on, and you'll get a good idea of how the story plays out. Now, before you start commenting about what you see in the actual gameplay, I would look at it more as showing off the story and the characters and not the actual mechanics that you can experience in the game. You see, the combat is very much placeholder. As you can see, it's very basic and it doesn't feel that great to work with. There's no directional sword fighting, blocking is almost impossible, and of course the swings and dodges are very, very clunky. But they said they've made this combat just temporary so they can actually get this alpha section out so people have something to play with. But the full combat later will be a fully functional system, which I'm looking forward to seeing, because as you can see, it's pretty basic at this point in time. This also extends to the animations. They will be eventually fully mocap, so at the moment they're very much procedurally or keyframed animations that don't look fantastic, but they do the job just to give you an idea of what the story, and once again with the graphics. The character models and everything you can see will be greatly improved in the full game. But the developers wanted to show people what they were working on. They wanted to highlight the story that they were looking at, and I think it's a good idea since this is a very unique way to approach a game. In this section, I'm going to talk a little bit about the story and my experience playing it. If you don't want spoilers because you want to download and play the alpha for yourself, skip to the time marker on screen right now, and you should have had your chance to leave. So let's get into it. You start off, of course, as one of 3 young officers in the Imperial Secret Intelligence in the Russian army. You've been told that there's been talks of witches and werewolves in villages nearby, so you must go and investigate. As you investigate, you meet certain characters along the way, some more innocent, some that seem more suspicious. But there are talks of men that have been bewitched by a sorceress that lives in this cabin on top of the hill. Turns out, she's just a drug dealer that likes selling shrooms. Furthermore, werewolves have plagued the land around ripping people from their homes. With more investigation, it turns out it's a disgraced officer that has turned the tide and, of course, once again taken It's basically a story about people high on shrooms, and these men have gone sadistic, and it is your job to take them out, to bring peace to the area again. But during this time, you hear stories of how people have left their homes, left their wives and children to go and join this wise man that you've heard of, and he seems to be stirring a rebellion, with threats of a civil war coming very, very soon, which I think is something that we're going to get onto and see later when the full game is released. I think what the game aims for, it does brilliantly. The story it's telling is intriguing, and I love to just watch the cutscenes. You'll notice some of the voice actors here are kind of familiar. Tom McKay is coming back into the gaming world, voicing one of the two Imperial officers that you go around with, and of course he has an incredibly recognizable voice throughout this game.
Brush, broken branches, footprints, human footprints that is.
There are some bugbears I have with the current controls, such as horse riding is infuriating. You see, when you're on foot, you can toggle shift to sprint or walk, but when you're on horseback, you have to hold shift in order to gallop, which is a really strange way of doing it and gets kind of confusing. Also, you can turn with A and D, or you can turn with your mouse. Having these two different ways of turning with your horse is very, very annoying, and you can't really look around yourself and look around the scenery, which the lighting makes it look beautiful. Overall, I think this game has some great potential. I think what they're working on is a very unique project, and I think they deserve all the support that they can get, which is why there will be a link in the description to go and download the game so you can play the free alpha version, and it's a few couple of missions, and it's a good fun to sort of get an idea of what they're working on. But this isn't sponsored by the game devs. I just really want to see this game. And one of the main factors and the main things you might feel where you're playing this is a sense of nostalgia for a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance, because this feels like that game so much. The single player narrative, the way that the characters talk to each other, the way that you can have these decisions that are made and they come back to affect you later on. I hope they make the combat and the controls good enough in order to back up this incredible story that they seem to be constructing at this point in time. And yeah, Tom McKay aside, with the voice of Henry coming back into this game, it really does feel like Kingdom Come Deliverance has been transported into another time era, and I think that's fantastic. I don't think they're going for a sort of copycat version of that game, but just the feeling of what they've made so far is very, very similar, and I think that's to their advantage. I think they can use this to expand the story even later on, and hopefully we might see some more people coming in, more characters, and some bigger battles. At the moment, it's just a bit of sword fighting. You can fire a pistol every now and then, but what if we got some big line battles? What if the Civil War did start and you had to go and fight these bigger battles? I think that would be some incredible stuff. Now, this is a small team, so it's quite unlikely we'll get that in the near future. However, if this game does well, I would love to see more stuff of this type, more single player experiences, because I do think that they're dying off a little bit. The true historical single player game doesn't seem to be as popular as it once was, so hopefully we can start bringing that back. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this has got some potential? If so, please leave a comment down below and make sure you go and check it out and play it for yourself. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.